a warship adrift. Its crew vanished into silence. In the final days of the Second World War, Yokosuka Harbor was no stranger to battered vessels limping home from battle. But the ship that drifted in on a gray morning of 1945 was unlike any other. It arrived without signal, without escort, its hull groaning as the tide carried it into the docks. Workers expecting weary sailors instead found silence. No figures stood on the deck, no voices called orders. The vessel seemed alive only with the creak of metal and the lap of water against its side. As the boarding party climbed aboard, their unease grew. The ship was not wrecked, its guns were intact, its compartments orderly. In the mess hall, bowls of rice and cups of tea still sat neatly upon tables, as if a meal had been interrupted only moments before. In the captain's cabin, a logbook lay open, the last entry written in a steady hand but ending mid-sentence. Lanterns burned low, their oil nearly spent, proof that someone had lit them not long ago. Yet everywhere the same truth repeated. No bodies, no blood, no struggle. The ship's lifeboats remained secured, untouched. The radio hummed faintly with static, as though awaiting a voice that would never return. Even the personal belongings of the crew, clothes folded, letters half-written, spoke of routine, not catastrophe. Rumors began at once. Some whispered that the crew had been taken by disease, their bodies cast overboard in haste. Others suggested desertion, though to leave food uneaten and duties unfinished defied reason. And still others believed something darker lingered in those silent corridors, something that had claimed the sailors without trace. What entered Yokosuka that morning was not simply a vessel, but a riddle. A ghost ship bearing the weight of absence more chilling than any battle could deliver. The search team moved cautiously through the warship's corridors, their footsteps echoing against steel walls. The air was thick with the smell of oil and seawater, yet beneath it lingered another scent, something faintly metallic, almost sweet. It was the smell of a place recently lived in, but now abandoned without reason. They began in the crew quarters. Bunks were neatly made, blankets tucked in with military precision. Shoes rested at their owners' bedsides. A deck of cards lay scattered on a table, a hand mid-play as though interrupted by a call to duty that never came. Cigarettes had burned down to ash in their trays. The silence pressed down like a weight, broken only by the soft groan of the hull as waves nudged the vessel. In the infirmary, medicine bottles stood uncapped, gauze unrolled, but no patients, no doctors. In the galley, pots of rice had grown cold, fish laid out for preparation untouched. The searchers exchanged uneasy glances. It was as if time had been halted, not by disaster, but by some invisible hand that had removed the crew in an instant, leaving their world behind intact. Then came the captain's cabin. Upon his desk, alongside the unfinished logbook, lay a single pair of reading glasses and a fountain pen, its nib stained with fresh ink. The last entry, still legible, described calm seas, a routine patrol, nothing unusual. It ended abruptly, mid-word, the line trailing into emptiness. Whispers grew among the men. Some swore they heard faint footsteps on the deck above, though no one was there. Others claimed a low murmur hummed through the corridors, not from the ship's engines, but from the steel itself. Fear took root. This was no ordinary derelict. By the time they emerged into daylight, the searchers carried more questions than answers. A ship prepared for life, suddenly devoid of it. A riddle etched into every silent room. The men looked back once at the vessel, its lanterns flickering in the fog, and the word passed their lips in a hush. Ghost.
Did you review the records? This is unbelievable.
When word spread of the abandoned warship, Yokosuka swelled with rumors. Dock workers, soldiers, and officials all told the story differently, but one detail remained constant. Not a single soul had been found aboard. The ship had arrived intact, its decks in order, its lanterns still glowing, but its crew, dozens of men, had dissolved into thin air. The Japanese Navy quickly filed reports, and within them lay contradictions. One record described the ship as fully operational, with no sign of conflict. Another hinted at a possible outbreak, though no evidence of sickness was noted. Still others claimed sabotage, mutiny, even desertion, but how could an entire crew vanish without taking lifeboats, without leaving chaos behind? Civilians filled in the gaps with their own stories. Some swore the ship had been seen days earlier, drifting in circles off the coast, as if lost in a trance. Fishermen claimed they heard voices calling across the water, only to find empty decks. A dock worker told of boarding the vessel briefly, only to feel a chill so profound it drove him back before he crossed the threshold. Among the officers, whispers were more guarded. They noted the strangeness of the logbook's final entry, the calm tone that ended mid-word. They wondered why no distress call had been sent, why no signs of struggle marred the mess halls or cabins. It was, one officer admitted, a ship prepared for life, found only in deathless silence. The Navy sealed its files quickly, labeling the incident as an unexplained abandonment. The ship itself was scrubbed, restaffed, and returned to duty within weeks. But the story could not be erased. Among sailors, it became a quiet warning, a ghost tale told over cigarettes and dim lanterns. They said the ship was cursed, that the sea had claimed its crew not with waves or fire, but with something far colder, absence. Explanations poured forth as sailors, scientists, and superstitious minds tried to solve the riddle of Yokosuka's ghost ship. Some insisted disease had swept the crew away, a sudden outbreak of plague or chemical exposure, forcing desperate men to cast their sick overboard. But the mess tables told a different story. Food untouched, letters unfinished, the rhythm of daily life frozen mid-breath. Illness leaves traces. This vessel bore none. Others leaned toward sabotage. Perhaps mutiny had erupted. Officers struck down, discipline dissolved. Yet where were the signs of violence? The logbook contained no warnings, no fearful scrawls, only calm routine until its abrupt silence. The decks bore no blood, no broken wood, no scorch marks of battle. It was mutiny without chaos, a desertion without destination. More unsettling were the whispers of the supernatural. Sailors spoke of hearing phantom footsteps echo across the deck at night, or voices drifting through the fog, calling in languages none recognized. A few swore that lanterns reignited themselves after being doused, burning with a faint, unnatural glow. To them, the ship had not been abandoned at all. It had been claimed. Among dockside taverns, the tale grew darker. They said the warship had wandered into forbidden waters, where ancient spirits dwelled beneath the sea. Others claimed the souls of the dead, lost in Pacific battles, had risen to take it as their own. Some even believed the crew still walked its decks, unseen, repeating their duties in endless silence, trapped between life and death. The Navy dismissed all such talk, sealing the official files with terse words. Crew lost. Cause unknown. But among those who had stepped aboard, the memory lingered. The silence of the mess hall, the ink-stained logbook, the lingering warmth of lantern light. They spoke not of men who left, but of men who had been erased. In the years that followed, the Yokosuka ghost ship became more than an incident. It became a legend. Sailors assigned to the vessel after its refitting whispered of strange occurrences that dogged their nights. In quiet hours, some claimed to hear footsteps pacing the decks above, steady and measured, though every berth was accounted for. Others spoke of doors opening by themselves, of radio static forming into voices that muttered names no one aboard recognized. One petty officer recalled entering the mess hall late at night, only to find bowls of rice steaming as if freshly served. He blinked, and they were gone. Another swore that in the reflection of a porthole he glimpsed a row of men in uniform seated silently at the tables, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on him until he turned and the room was empty. Stories traveled far beyond the harbor. Fishermen claimed they saw the ship anchored offshore, lanterns lit though no crew moved on deck. Dock workers said they felt an unnatural chill whenever the vessel entered port, as though it dragged the cold of the deep sea with it. For the families of the lost sailors, these tales were both torment and hope. Did their sons still linger, shadows bound to steel? Historians searched for parallels, comparing the Yokosuka mystery to other legends of the sea. The Mary Celeste in the Atlantic, ghost ships spoken of in sailors' lore. Yet none could explain why, in 1945, a warship should arrive home so intact, so untouched, and so empty. The Navy discouraged talk of curses, but even officers avoided the subject. To speak of the ship was to summon unease, and though it sailed under new crews, its name forever carried the weight of those who had vanished, leaving behind a silence more chilling than cannon fire. By 1946, the Japanese Navy had no patience left for mystery. Reports were filed, stamped, and sealed. The ship was reassigned, its decks scrubbed clean, its story officially closed. In the archives, the words were blunt: crew lost, circumstances unverified. It was the language of bureaucracy, cold and tidy, meant to bury uncertainty beneath paper and ink. But silence on paper could not erase the memories of those who had stepped aboard. Dock workers who had seen the empty bunks still shivered when they spoke of the smell of warm tea that lingered in the galley. Officers remembered the half-written letters, the glasses folded neatly beside the captain's log, and sailors whispered of a vessel that would never truly be manned again. The Navy's effort to suppress the story had the opposite effect. Each unanswered question bred a new rumor. Some believed the crew had been captured by foreign powers in the chaos of war. Others swore the men had mutinied and fled, leaving behind a ghost ship for shame. But the most enduring tale was the simplest. that the sea itself had taken them, leaving their ship as an empty shell, drifting home under a curse no document could explain. Even decades later, the name of the ship carried unease. Veterans lowered their voices when it was mentioned, their eyes distant, as if recalling not just a vessel, but a presence. The younger generation of sailors avoided the assignment altogether, calling it the Hollow Ship. And among Yokosuka's fishermen, the story persisted, that on foggy nights, a warship could be seen anchored just offshore, lanterns burning, crewless and waiting. In the end, the Navy's stamped words meant little. The official file was thin, but the legend grew fat in the mouths of men who had known the weight of silence aboard that steel hull. The ghost ship had been absorbed into history not as fact, but as myth. And perhaps that was more haunting than any truth. Today, the tale of Yokosuka's ghost ship survives not in archives, but in whispers. In seaside taverns, old fishermen still lean close to their cups and speak of the vessel that arrived with warm meals waiting, but no hands to eat them. Younger sailors roll their eyes, yet even they fall silent when the fog thickens across the harbor. For on those nights, some claim to see it. The silhouette of a warship anchored in still waters, its lanterns glowing faintly as if awaiting the return of a vanished crew. Historians categorize it as myth, a cousin to the tales of the Mary Celeste and countless ghost ships scattered across the seas of the world. They suggest faulty reports, confusion in wartime, exaggeration born of fear. But the logbook entries remain. The half-written letters remain. The memory of stepping into a galley set for a meal that would never be eaten remains. These fragments are harder to dismiss as they bear the mark not of imagination, but of lived reality. For those who knew the ship, the legend is more than a story. It is a warning. The sea, vast and unrelenting, does not always take with storm or fire. Sometimes it takes with silence, an erasure so complete it leaves no trace but absence itself. And so the vessel's ghost lingers, not tied to Yokosuka alone, but to every harbor where sailors know that steel and discipline are no match for the mysteries of the deep. The warship that came home empty is remembered as more than a curiosity. It is a reminder that the ocean, in its infinite breadth, keeps secrets no man can command. Somewhere, perhaps, the crew still marches through those corridors, shadows at their posts, bound to duty even in death. And when the fog drapes Yokosuka Harbor, the living glance out to sea and wonder if the ship still waits, lanterns glowing for the men who will never return.